Hello everyone. My name is Logan, and if you're new here, this is where I share real experiences, real nightmares that happen to people just like you and me. Today's story, it's different because this one, it happened to me, and I'm still not sure if I should even be telling you this. But someone needs to know what's really down there, 10,000 feet beneath the ocean surface. I was part of a deep-sea research team. We went looking for answers, but what we found, what we brought back with us. I can feel it watching me even now. As I record this, the water in my apartment, it moves on its own. And last night, I swear I heard breathing coming from my bathroom, sink slow, deliberate breathing, like something was testing the air, learning how to exist in our world. Before I begin, I can see that 80% of my viewers haven't subscribed yet, and honestly, if this story affects you the way it affected me, you'll want to stay updated. So please, hit that subscribe button, smash the like, and turn on the bell icon so you never miss an upload. Also, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. I absolutely love reading your comments, and if you have your own paranormal or unexplained story, email us or leave it in the comments below. I might feature it in a future video. Now, let me take you back to where this nightmare began, and I mean really began, because what I'm about to tell you, it didn't start with our expedition. It started much earlier, years earlier, with warning signs that we all ignored. It was March of last year. I was working as a marine equipment technician for Ocean Corps Research Facility, based out of Seattle. We were one of the leading privately funded deep-sea exploration companies in the world, and our specialty was going where no one else dared to go, pushing the boundaries of human exploration, diving deeper than anyone thought possible. But before I tell you about that final dive, I need to tell you about the months leading up to it, because there were signs, so many signs, that we should have recognized, that we should have taken seriously. But we didn't, and that mistake, it cost us everything. Our team consisted of 6 people. There was Chase, our expedition leader, a man in his mid-40s with more dive hours than anyone I'd ever met. His eyes had this constant faraway look, like he was always thinking about the depths, always planning the next descent, always pushing for deeper, darker, more dangerous locations. I remember the first time I met Chase. It was 3 years ago, during my interview for the position. He looked at me with those intense gray eyes and said something I'll never forget. He said, "Logan, the ocean keeps secrets, ancient secrets, and I intend to uncover every single one of them, no matter what it costs, no matter what we find down there." At the time, I thought it was just passion, dedication to science. But now, looking back, I wonder if Chase knew something, if he'd seen something on his previous dives, something that drove him to keep searching, keep diving, keep pushing into places that should have been left alone. Then there was Harper, our marine biologist, 28 years old, brilliant mind. She could identify species from the smallest fragment. She had joined our team 2 years prior after completing her doctorate in London, and she was obsessed, absolutely obsessed with discovering new life forms in the Hadal Zone. Harper had this theory. She called it the deep origin hypothesis. She believed that life on Earth didn't begin in shallow tidal pools like everyone thought. She believed it began in the deepest parts of the ocean, in places so deep, so dark, that they existed in conditions more similar to other planets than to the surface of Earth. She would spend hours, days, studying samples from deep-sea dives, looking for evidence of her theory, and about 6 months before our final expedition, she found something that changed everything. I remember the day she burst into the equipment lab, her face flushed with excitement, her hands shaking as she held up a small vial containing something. It looked like tissue organic material, but it was moving, pulsing, even though it had been dead for hours. "Logan," she said breathlessly, "look at this. This came from 8,000 feet, from the Tonga Trench, and it's not like anything in our database. The cellular structure, it's wrong. The DNA, if you can even call it that, it has extra base pairs, sequences that shouldn't exist, that can't exist according to everything we know about biology." I looked at the sample through her microscope, and she was right. The cells were wrong. They had this geometric pattern to them, almost crystalline, like they were part organic, part something else, something that followed different rules. "What do you think it is?" I asked her. She was quiet for a long moment, staring at that sample. And then she said something that sent chills down my spine. I think it's old. Logan, really old. Older than anything we've ever found. I think this is what came before fish, before plankton, before everything we think of as life. I think this is the original template, the first design. And I think there's more of it down there, much more. Quinn was our communications officer, 32, former Australian Navy. She handled all our surface communications and monitored our vital signs during dives. Quinn had this unsettling ability to sense when something was wrong, even before the instruments picked it up. Quinn had served on submarines for 8 years before joining our team, and she'd seen things, experienced things, that she rarely talked about. But one night, about 2 months before our expedition, we were working late, calibrating equipment, and she opened up to me. "Logan," she said quietly, "have you ever felt like the ocean is aware of you? Like it knows you're there, like it's watching you?" I laughed nervously. That's just the isolation talking, the pressure. Everyone feels that way when they're underwater. But she shook her head, her expression serious. "No, I mean really aware, like there's intelligence down there, something vast and ancient. And every time we go down, every time we push deeper, we're getting closer to it. And eventually, we're going to get too close." She told me about an incident that happened during her Navy service. Her submarine had been conducting deep water exercises in the Philippine Trench. They were at about 6,000 feet when their sonar picked up something massive, something that was moving in ways that didn't make sense. It was huge. She said, her voice barely above a whisper, "Bigger than our submarine, bigger than anything biological should be at that depth, and it was following us, matching our speed, our course. For 3 hours it stayed with us, and then suddenly, it just dropped, straight down, faster than anything should be able to move. And when we checked the sonar, it showed that thing had descended to over 15,000 feet in less than a minute." "What do you think it was?" I asked. She looked at me with those haunted eyes and said, "I think it was deciding whether or not to let us leave. I think it was studying us, learning about us, and I think we got lucky, because it decided we weren't ready yet, but one day soon, something's going to go down there that it doesn't let come back up." Ryder, he was our pilot, controlled the submersible with an artist's precision. 35 years old, grew up in Christchurch, and he treated that submersible like it was his child, knew every bolt, every wire, every sound it made. Ryder had been with Ocean Corps longer than anyone, 10 years, and he'd piloted over 200 deep-sea dives. But about 4 months before our final expedition, something changed. He became quieter, more withdrawn, and he started having nightmares. I found him one morning in the equipment bay. He'd fallen asleep there, and he was thrashing, sweating, making these horrible sounds. I woke him up, and the look on his face, pure terror. "They're down there," he muttered, still half asleep. "I can see them in my dreams. They're waiting. They know we're coming. They've been waiting for so long, so very long. And they're hungry. Hungry for the surface, hungry for the light." He refused to talk about it after that, but I noticed he started checking and rechecking the submersible systems, obsessively, like he was preparing for something. Like he knew our next dive was going to be different, dangerous, final. Sierra was our geologist, 29. She studied underwater formations and seismic activity. She'd predicted 3 underwater earthquakes in the previous year alone, saved countless lives with her early warnings. But her real talent, the one that made her invaluable to our team, was her ability to read the ocean floor, to understand what was beneath the sediment, what was hidden in the crust of the earth. And 3 months before our expedition, Sierra made a discovery that should have stopped everything, that should have been our warning to turn back, to cancel the mission, to leave well enough alone. She was analyzing seismic data from the Mariana Trench, routine survey work, when she noticed something anomalous. There was a massive void space beneath the ocean floor, a cavity that extended for miles, and it was old, incredibly old, dating back millions of years, possibly billions. But that wasn't the strange part. The strange part was that the void was growing slowly, incrementally, like something was excavating it from below, expanding it, creating more space. "Logan," she showed me the data, her hands trembling slightly. "This doesn't make geological sense. Cavities this size. They should collapse. The pressure should crush them. But this one, it's stable, artificially stable, like something is maintaining it, holding it open. And look at these readings. There's heat down there, geothermal activity. But the patterns, they're not natural. They're too regular, too organized, almost like what? I pressed. She looked at me, and I saw fear in her eyes, real fear. Like machinery, like something is running down there. Something that's been running for a very, very long time. We should have stopped then. We should have reported Sierra's findings, filed them away, and moved on to safer projects. But Chase was obsessed. The more anomalies we found, the more excited he became. He saw it as proof validation, that there was something significant down there, something worth discovering. And me, I was just excited to be part of something big, something important. I was young, ambitious, and I wanted to make my mark. I wanted to be part of the team that made the discovery of the century. God, I was so stupid, we all were. If you're enjoying the story so far, please take a moment to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell, because what I'm about to tell you, it gets so much worse, and you're going to want to hear every detail, every warning, so that you don't make the same mistakes we did. Also, drop a comment below telling me, have you ever felt like you were being watched? Like there was something just beyond your perception, waiting, observing? I read every comment, and I want to know, are we the only ones who've experienced this? Or is this happening to more people than we realize? Now, let me tell you about the preparation phase, the 2 months leading up to our dive, because this is where things started to go wrong. Even before we left the facility, we've been planning this expedition for 8 months. Our target was the Mariana Trench, but not the Challenger Deep that everyone knows about. We were heading to an unexplored section, a trench within the trench that our sonar had picked up 6 months earlier, a place that had never been mapped, never been explored, never been touched by human hands. The readings were strange. There was a massive cavity down there, roughly the size of a football stadium, and it was emitting unusual electromagnetic signatures that didn't match anything in our database, frequencies that shouldn't exist in nature, patterns that seemed almost structured, like a signal, like communication. Chase was convinced we'd find a hydrothermal vent system, maybe even a new ecosystem. Harper couldn't sleep for weeks leading up to the dive. She was that excited. She kept saying that this was it. This was the proof of her deep origin hypothesis. This was going to change everything we knew about life on Earth. But as we prepared, as we gathered our equipment, tested our systems, trained for the dive, things started happening. Small things at first, easy to dismiss, easy to ignore. But in hindsight, they were warnings, clear warnings, that we were making a terrible mistake. The first incident happened during equipment testing. We were running diagnostics on submersibles, external cameras, and one of them, camera 4. It started showing things that weren't there, shapes in the test tank, movements in the water, even though the tank was empty, completely empty. Ryder thought it was a malfunction, a glitch in the camera's processor. But when we replaced the camera, the new one did the same thing, showed the same impossible shapes, the same phantom movements. It's just electromagnetic interference. Ryder insisted. The facility has old wiring. It causes problems with sensitive equipment. Nothing to worry about. But I noticed he wouldn't look at the camera feed directly. He'd glance at it, quick looks, then look away, like he was afraid of what he might see if he stared too long. The second incident was with the water samples. Harper had been collecting deep-sea water from various trenches, building a baseline for comparison with whatever we found on our expedition, and one of her samples, the one from the Mariana Trench, the one from near our target location, it started behaving strangely. The water, it wouldn't mix with other liquids. When she tried to add chemical reagents, they would separate, like oil and water, even though they should have mixed completely. And worse, the water seemed to resist temperature change. She could heat it to boiling, and within seconds it would return to its original temperature, as if something was regulating it, controlling it. This is impossible. She kept saying, water doesn't behave like this. This violates basic thermodynamics. There's something in this water, something that's changing its properties, but I can't isolate it, can't identify it. Every time I try to filter it, to separate the components, the water just reforms, like it's protecting something, like it doesn't want to be analyzed. The third incident, This one scared me, really scared me. It happened 1 week before we were scheduled to ship out. I was working late in the equipment bay, alone, doing final checks on the life support systems. It was past midnight. The facility was empty. Just me and the night security guard. And I heard something. A sound coming from the test tank. The large one we used for submersible trials. The one that held over 50,000 gallons of seawater. It was a tapping sound, rhythmic, deliberate tap, 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 pause, tap, 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 pause, like someone was knocking on glass, trying to get attention. I walked over to the tank, my footsteps echoing in the empty bay, and I looked into the water. It was dark, the lights were off, but I could see movement, shapes moving in the darkness, and then one of them swam up to the glass, and I got a clear look at it. It wasn't a fish. It wasn't anything I recognized. It had a roughly cylindrical body, pale, translucent, with multiple appendages that sprouted from its sides, and at one end there was something that might have been a head, might have been a sensory cluster. I couldn't tell. But what I could tell, what I knew with absolute certainty, was that this thing wasn't supposed to be there, wasn't supposed to exist. The tapping continued, tap, 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 and I realized the thing was tapping on the glass, deliberately, purposefully, like it was trying to communicate, or trying to get out. I ran. I'm not ashamed to admit it. I ran out of that equipment bay, and I didn't stop until I was in my car, driving away from the facility, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the steering wheel. The next morning, I told Chase what I'd seen, and he laughed, actually laughed. Logan, you were working too hard, overtired. The mind plays tricks when you're exhausted. There's nothing in that tank except regular ocean water and regular ocean creatures. Small fish probably, or squid. You know how squid can look strange in low light. But Quinn believed me. She pulled me aside later that day. I've heard them too, she whispered. At night, when I'm here alone, I hear tapping from the tanks, from the pipes, even from the walls sometimes, like something is trying to get through, trying to reach us. And it's getting louder, more persistent, like it knows we're planning something, like it knows we're coming. But Quinn, she had reservations. I remember the night before we shipped out. We were having dinner at this little seafood place near the facility. The team was celebrating, excited, talking about the expedition, about the discoveries we were going to make, about how this dive was going to put Ocean Corps on the map, make us all famous. But Quinn, she was quiet, barely touching her food, just staring out the window at the ocean, at the dark water reflecting the city lights, and eventually, she pulled me aside, away from the others. Logan, she said quietly, her voice tense, I keep having this dream. We're down there in the submersible, and something's looking back at us through the viewport, something that knows we don't belong there, something that's been waiting for us, and in the dream, I can hear it speaking, not with words, not with sounds, but directly into my mind. And it's saying, finally you come to us. Finally we can show you what you really are, what you've always been, what you'll become. I laughed it off. I had to, because the alternative was too terrifying to consider. I told her it was just pre-dive jitters. Everyone gets them. Told her that we'd been training for this for months, that we had the best equipment, the best team, that nothing was going to go wrong. But I saw the look in her eyes, and I knew she wasn't convinced. She was genuinely afraid, and maybe she was right to be. Promise me something, she said, grabbing my arm, her grip tight, almost painful. Promise me that if anything goes wrong down there, if we see something that doesn't make sense, something that shouldn't exist, we turn back immediately. We don't investigate. We don't collect samples. We just turn around and come back up. Promise me. Logan, please. I promised. I gave her my word. And I meant it in that moment. I really did. But promises made on the surface, they don't mean much when you're 10,000 feet down, when you're face to face with impossible, when scientific curiosity overrides survival instinct. We shipped out on March 15th, aboard the Prometheus, a research vessel equipped with the latest deep-sea technology, state-of-the-art sonar, advanced navigation systems, satellite communication arrays, everything we could possibly need for a successful expedition. Or so we thought. Our submersible was called the Abyssal Star, titanium hull rated for depths exceeding 35,000 feet, life support for 96 hours, Redundant systems, backup systems, emergency protocols. It was designed to be virtually indestructible, designed to withstand the most extreme conditions Earth could offer. But we didn't design it to withstand them. The journey to our dive site took 3 days, and those 3 days, they were strange, wrong in ways that I couldn't quite identify. Couldn't quite articulate, but everyone felt it. I could see it in their faces, in the way they moved, in the way they spoke. The ocean was unusually calm, almost too calm, like glass. Not a single wave, not a ripple, just flat, endless, reflecting the sky perfectly. And Sierra kept checking her instruments, over and over, her frown deepening with each reading. It's like the Earth is holding its breath. She said on the second day, showing me her seismic monitors, "Look at this. Normally there's constant microseismic activity. Little tremors, movements in the crust. It's natural, it's expected. But for the past 48 hours, nothing. Complete silence. Like every tectonic plate on Earth suddenly stopped moving, all at once." "Is that dangerous?" I asked. She was quiet for a long moment then. "I don't know. I've never seen anything like this. It's like the Earth itself is waiting, anticipating something. And that scares me. Logan, that scares me more than any earthquake." And the ocean, even though it was calm on the surface, beneath was different. We were running routine sonar sweeps, mapping the water column, and we kept getting strange returns, contacts that appeared and disappeared, objects that moved in patterns that made no sense, descending and descending at speeds that should have been impossible. Ryder was monitoring the sonar one evening. I was with him in the control room, and he suddenly went very still, his face pale. "Logan," he said, his voice barely audible. "Look at this. Tell me what you see." I looked at the sonar display, and at first I thought it was a malfunction, a glitch, because what I was seeing couldn't be real, couldn't be possible. There were dozens of contacts, maybe hundreds, all around us, maintaining a perfect circle, a ring around the Prometheus, staying at a constant depth of approximately 2,000 feet. And they were large. Each contact showed a mass roughly the size of a bus, and they weren't moving randomly. They were rotating slowly, deliberately, like they were orbiting us, like we were the center of some vast underwater carousel. "How long have they been there?" I asked. "At least an hour." Ryder replied, "Maybe longer. I've been watching them. They appeared one by one, gradually surrounding us, and now they're just circling, waiting." "Waiting for what?" He looked at me, and I saw something in his eyes that I'd never seen before, not in all the years I'd known him. I saw hopelessness, waiting for us to dive. He said, "They know why we're here, they know what we're planning, and they're waiting for us to come down to them." We reported the contacts to Chase, showed him the sonar data, and he studied it carefully, his expression unreadable. And then he said something that should have been our final warning, our last chance to turn back. "They're greeting us." He said, a strange smile on his face, "Don't you see? This is first contact. This is what we've been searching for. Proof of intelligence in the deep. Proof that we're not alone down there. This is incredible. This changes everything." "Oh," Quinn interrupted. "They're warning us, telling us to turn back, telling us that we're not welcome, that we're trespassing in a place we shouldn't be." Chase ignored her. He was too excited, too obsessed with his discovery. "We proceed as planned." He said, "Tomorrow morning, we dive, and we make history." That night, none of us could sleep. I lay in my bunk, listening to the creaking of the ship, the sound of water lapping against the hull, and I could swear I heard voices, faint whispers carried on the wind, speaking in a language that wasn't quite language, sounds that weren't quite sounds, but somehow I could almost understand them, almost make out words, almost grasp their meaning. They were saying, Come down to us, come see what we have prepared, come see what you will become." I pulled my pillow over my head, tried to block out the voices, but they persisted, grew louder, more insistent, and eventually, I gave up trying to sleep. I got up, went up to the deck, hoping the fresh air would clear my head. Harper was already there, standing at the railing, staring down at the dark water, and even in the moonlight, I could see she'd been crying. Her face was wet, her eyes red. "I don't want to go down there tomorrow." she said without looking at me. I've spent my entire career dreaming of this moment, of discovering something new, something that would change our understanding of life. But now that we're here, now that it's actually happening, I'm terrified because I think we're going to find something. Logan, I think we're going to find something terrible, something that will make us wish we'd never come here. Then let's not go. I said, let's tell Chase we're aborting. Equipment malfunction, mechanical failure, anything. We can come back later, better prepared. She shook her head. You know Chase won't agree. He's too committed, too obsessed, and besides. She paused, looked at me with haunted eyes. I don't think they'll let us leave. Not now. Not when we're so close. I think we lost our chance to turn back the moment we entered these waters. And maybe she was right, because when I looked over the railing, down at the water, I could see them, shapes moving just beneath the surface, pale forms gliding through the darkness, circling, always circling, patient, waiting, knowing that eventually, inevitably, we would come to them. On the morning of March 18th, we began our descent. The sky was overcast, heavy gray clouds that seemed to press down on the ocean, and the water. The water looked wrong somehow, darker than it should be, thicker, like it was resisting our presence, like it didn't want to let us in. Chase, Harper, and I would make the dive while Quinn, Ryder from the backup controls, and Sierra monitored us from the surface. The plan was simple. Descend to the target depth, document the cavity, collect samples, then return. Routine scientific dive. Nothing we hadn't done dozens of times before. Except this wasn't routine, and nothing about this dive would be normal. I remember climbing into the abyssal star. The interior smelled like metal and ozone, and something else, something organic, like decay, like age, like time itself had seeped into the titanium walls and was waiting for us. Chase was already in a pilot's seat, running pre-dive checks. His movements mechanical, practiced, but I noticed his hands. They were shaking slightly, and he kept glancing at the viewports, like he was expecting to see something looking back at him. Harper climbed in last. She paused at the hatch, looked back at the Prometheus, at Quinn and Sierra and Ryder standing on the deck, and for a moment, just a moment, I thought she was going to refuse, go and climb back out and cancel the dive. But then she took a deep breath and sealed us in. The hatch closed with that final, definitive clang, that sound of metal on metal that seems to echo forever in a confined space. And suddenly we were alone, just the three of us, separated from a world by 6 inches of titanium and 10,000 feet of water that we were about to descend into. All systems green. Chase announced, his voice steady despite his shaking hands. Ready for deployment. Through the viewport, I could see the crane arm positioning above us, then the jolt as we were lifted, suspended over the ocean, and then the descent, the water rising to meet us, engulfing us, pulling us down. The sunlight faded quickly, replaced by a deep blue, then darker blue, then a blue so dark it was almost black, and I watched the light meter on my console, watched the numbers drop, watched the photons disappear, until finally there was nothing, absolute darkness, except for our external lights cutting through the void like knives. Communications check. Quinn's voice crackled through our headsets, clear and professional, but I could hear the tension underneath, reading you loud and clear. Chase responded, his hands now steady on the controls, all business, all focus. Beginning descent to target depth, current depth 100 feet, and descending. The first 1,000 feet, it's still relatively bright. You can see fish, familiar shapes, normal ocean life, schools of tuna. A few sharks curious about the strange metal object descending through their territory. Jellyfish pulsing through the water like living parachutes. All normal, all expected, all comforting in its familiarity. But as we dropped further, 2,000 feet, 3,000, the familiar disappeared, replaced by the strange, the alien, the things that live their entire lives in darkness and have evolved into forms that seem impossible, that seem wrong somehow, like nature was experimenting, playing with different designs, seeing what would work in a world without light. Depth for 1,000 feet. I called out, monitoring our systems. All equipment functioning normally, hull integrity at 100%, external pressure increasing, but within parameters, life support optimal, battery power at 98%. Harper had her face pressed against the viewport. her breath fogging the glass. She was looking for life, for anything moving in the darkness. Our external lights illuminated a sphere approximately 30 feet in radius. Beyond that, nothing but void, empty black that seemed to swallow our lights, seemed to resist illumination. A bioluminescent jellyfish drifted past, its body glowing with pale blue light, trailing tentacles that stretched for 20 feet or more. And for a moment, just a moment, I thought I saw something else, something larger, moving behind it, using the jellyfish as cover, watching us, studying us. But then it was gone, disappeared into the black, and I convinced myself I'd imagined it. At 6,000 feet, we entered the Hadal Zone. This is where the ocean becomes truly alien, truly hostile to human life. The pressure here is over 4 tons per square inch, enough to crush a human body instantly, to compress it into something the size of a softball. The temperature hovers just above freezing, and the darkness is absolute, complete, total. Without our lights, we would be blind, and worse, we would be alone with whatever lives down here, whatever has adapted to exist in this impossibly hostile environment. I've got something on sonar, Chase said suddenly, his voice tight, controlled, professional, but underneath I heard something else, excitement maybe, or fear. Bearing 270, distance approximately 800 feet. Something big, really big. Harper pressed her face harder against the glass. Can you get us closer? I need to see it. I need to identify it. Negative, Chase replied, his eyes fixed on the sonar display. Whatever it is, it's moving away from us, fast, descending at a rate of, 500 feet per minute. Nothing should be able to move that fast at this depth. The water resistance, the pressure. It's not possible. We watched the sonar screen. The object, whatever it was, dropped rapidly, descending below our target depth, below the cavity we were investigating, going deeper, until finally, it vanished from our instruments completely. Just disappeared, like it had never existed. Lost contact. I said, checking and rechecking my equipment, running diagnostics. It just disappeared, fell off our sensors, or stopped existing, or, I don't know, this doesn't make sense. Probably a whale, Chase said, but his voice lacked conviction, lacked certainty, and I noticed he kept glancing at that bearing, 270, like he expected that thing to come back, to return from the deep end, and what? I didn't want to think about it, but Harper shook her head slowly, her face pale in the dim interior lights. No whale dives below 8,000 feet. Logan, and nothing moves that fast at this depth, nothing we know about anyway, nothing that should exist according to our understanding of biology, of physics, of what's possible. And that phrase, nothing we know about, it hung in the air between us, heavy, ominous, because what it implied, what it suggested, was that there were things down here, things we didn't know about, things that defied our science, our understanding, things that shouldn't exist, but did, things that were waiting in the dark. We continued our descent, 7,000 feet, 8,000, 9,000, and the deeper we went, the more wrong everything felt. The hull was contracting, making these occasional popping sounds as the pressure increased, sounds that echoed through the interior like gunshots, each one making my heart skip, making me jump, making me check and recheck our hull integrity monitors. Logan, Quinn's voice came through, slightly distorted now by the depth, by the water between us. We're seeing some unusual readings on our end, electromagnetic interference increasing, much higher than normal for this depth. Are your instruments still calibrated? Are you getting accurate data? I checked my panels, and she was right. There was interference, electromagnetic noise that was growing stronger as we descended, playing havoc with our sensors, our communications, our navigation systems. Confirmed, I said, trying to keep my voice steady, professional. But all systems still operational, still within acceptable parameters. Might be natural phenomena from whatever's generating those signatures down there. Might be geological, mineral deposits, or something else. Or something else. Harper repeated quietly, and I wished she hadn't, because those words, they opened up possibilities I didn't want to consider, didn't want to acknowledge. At 9,500 feet, we saw the bottom, or what we thought was the bottom. Our lights illuminated a vast field of sediment, gray-white particles that should have been lying still, should have been settled, packed down by millennia of pressure. But it wasn't. The sediment was moving, swirling in patterns that made no sense, that defied physics. There was no current at this depth that could cause such movement, no thermal activity, no geological process that could explain what we were seeing. "Are you seeing this?" Harper whispered, her voice filled with awe and something else, fear maybe, or recognition, like she was seeing something she'd expected, something she'd hoped not to find. "The sediment. It's forming patterns. Look, do you see? Geometric patterns, spirals, fractals, like it's being controlled, directed by something." And she was right. As I watched, as my brain tried to process what my eyes were seeing, I realized the sediment wasn't moving randomly. It was moving in deliberate patterns, mathematical patterns, patterns that suggested intelligence, purpose, design, patterns that were drawing something, showing us something. But what? What were they trying to tell us? "Depth 10,000 feet. Chase announced, his voice tense, strained. "We're approaching the target coordinates. Logan, activate the external camera array. I want everything recorded, every angle, every detail. If this is what I think it is, if we've found what we're looking for, I want documentation. I want proof." I flipped the switches one by one, and 6 high-definition cameras hummed to life, their mechanical sounds somehow obscene in the silence of the deep, capturing every angle, recording everything, creating a permanent record of what we were about to discover, what we were about to wish we'd never seen, never documented, never brought back to the surface with us. And then we saw it, the cavity, the void, the thing that had drawn us here, that had called to us across thousands of miles of ocean, and I knew in that instant that Quinn had been right, that we should have turned back, that we should never have come here. The cavity was massive, impossibly massive. Our lights couldn't reach the far side, couldn't penetrate deep enough to see the top. It was like looking into the mouth of some vast creature, some leviathan that had opened its jaws to swallow us. And the walls weren't rock, weren't sediment, they were smooth, almost polished, covered in patterns that hurt to look at, geometric designs that seemed to shift and move when you looked at them directly, that seemed to writhe and pulse with their own internal light. "My God," Harper breathed, her hands pressed against the glass, her face illuminated by the pale bioluminescent glow emanating from the cavity walls. "It's not natural. None of this is natural. This was made, constructed by something. But when? How long has this been here?" Sierra's voice crackled through the comm system, distant now, distorted by the depth and the electromagnetic interference. "Chase, we're reading massive energy signatures from your location. Whatever's down there, it's active, it's powered. You need to be careful. You need to—" Her voice cut out, replaced by static, then silence, then something else, something that might have been voices, might have been sounds, or might have been nothing at all. Just the ocean playing tricks, just the pressure affecting our minds, just fear manifesting as audio hallucinations. "Sierra, come in." I called, adjusting frequencies, trying to re-establish communication. "Sierra, Quinn, Ryder, anyone respond, please." Nothing, just that static, that empty hiss that somehow felt alive, felt conscious, felt like something was listening, waiting for us to say the wrong thing, to acknowledge what we were seeing. Chase piloted the Abyssal Star closer to the cavity entrance, and I wanted to scream, wanted to grab the controls, wanted to force us to surface, but I didn't. I was frozen, paralyzed by what I was seeing, by the sheer impossibility of it all. The entrance was roughly circular, maybe 300 feet in diameter, and as we approached, as our lights cut deeper into the void, I saw movement, shapes moving in the darkness beyond, large shapes, many of them, and they were watching us. I could feel their attention, could feel their gaze like physical weight pressing against my skull, examining us, evaluating us, deciding something. "We need to go in," Chase said, and his voice was different now, hollow, distant, like he wasn't really speaking, like something else was using his mouth, his vocal cords, speaking words that he didn't consciously choose. "We need to see what's inside, need to document, need to understand." "No," Harper said, her voice shaking. "No. Chase, look at the walls, look at those patterns. I've seen them before in my samples, in that tissue from the Tonga Trench. This is them. This is where they come from. where they've always been. And if we go in there, if we enter their space, we won't come back out, at least, not as ourselves. But Chase wasn't listening, or couldn't listen. His hands moved over the controls, practiced, efficient, guiding us forward, into the cavity, into the darkness, into whatever was waiting for us in there. The moment we crossed the threshold, everything changed. The electromagnetic interference spiked. Our instruments went haywire. Readings that made no sense, measurements that violated every law of physics. The temperature inside the cavity was higher, much higher, almost warm. Impossible at this depth, impossible in water this deep, this cold. And the light, there was light down here, not sunlight, not bioluminescence, but something else entirely. A pale phosphorescent glow that seemed to emanate from the walls themselves, from the patterns, casting everything in shades of green and blue and colors I didn't have names for, colors my brain couldn't properly process, couldn't properly interpret. The cavity opened up into a vast chamber, and I realized we weren't in a natural formation. We were in a structure, a building, something constructed with purpose, with intent, with intelligence, far beyond anything humanity had achieved. The floor was covered in what looked like coral, but it moved, pulsed, breathed, and I realized it wasn't coral at all. It was alive, one vast organism, connected, networked, thinking, and it covered everything, the floor, the walls, spreading out as far as our lights could reach, as far as I could see, recording everything. I whispered, making sure our cameras were capturing this, documenting the impossible, creating evidence that no one would believe, that no one could believe, because what we were seeing, it shouldn't exist, couldn't exist, not on Earth, not in our reality. Harper was taking readings, her instruments beeping, chirping, screaming with data that contradicted everything we knew about biology, about life, about the limits of what was possible. The biomass, she said, her voice barely audible. It's massive, this organism. If that's what it is, it has to weigh millions of tons, billions maybe, and it's old. Logan, so incredibly old, my dating equipment can't get an accurate reading. Keeps showing impossible numbers, billions of years, predating life on Earth, predating the formation of the oceans themselves, which can't be right, which makes no sense unless... Unless what? I asked, even though I didn't want to know, didn't want to hear what she was thinking, unless it didn't originate here. She finished, her eyes wide, reflecting the strange light. Unless it came from somewhere else, somewhere not Earth, and has been here, waiting, growing, preparing for a very, very long time. The thought hung between us, heavy, suffocating, more crushing than the pressure outside our hull. The idea that what we were looking at, what we were inside of, was extraterrestrial, was alien, was something that had crossed the vast emptiness of space and found Earth, and decided to make it home. Chase guided us deeper into the chamber, and I saw them. Really saw them for the first time. The things that lived here, the things that had always lived here, hidden in the deepest parts of the ocean where light never reached, where humans couldn't follow, where they could exist undisturbed for millions of years. They weren't like anything in our taxonomies, weren't like anything evolution should have produced. They were wrong in fundamental ways. Their bodies seemed to shift, to phase, like they existed partially in our reality and partially somewhere else, and their forms, God, the forms defied description, defied understanding. Some were large, massive, the size of houses, moving slowly through the water with appendages that sprouted and retracted, that changed shape and function as needed. Others were smaller, swarming in schools, moving in perfect synchronization, like they shared one mind, one consciousness, one terrible purpose. And they were all watching us, all aware of our presence. I could feel their attention, could feel their curiosity. And something else, something that might have been satisfaction? Yes, satisfaction, like they'd been waiting for this moment, waiting for us to finally arrive, to finally come to them, to finally see what they really were. Chase, I said, my voice cracking, breaking with fear I could no longer hide. Chase, we need to leave, now, we need to surface, we need to get out of here before. Before what? He replied, and his voice was calm, too calm. Unnaturally calm, before we learn the truth, before we understand our place in the universe, before we realize that humanity isn't the apex, isn't the culmination of evolution, but just another step, just another phase, just another iteration in something much larger, much older, much more significant than we ever imagined. He turned to look at me, and his eyes were different. The pupils were too large, too dark, and there was something moving in them, something writhing behind the cornea, something that definitely wasn't human. "Chase," Harper whispered, backing away from him, pressing herself against the far wall of the submersible. What happened to you?" He smiled, but it wasn't his smile, wasn't the expression of a human being. It was something else using his face, something that didn't quite understand how human expressions worked. "Nothing happened to me," he said, his voice layered now, multiple tones speaking simultaneously, harmonizing in ways that made my teeth ache, made my skull vibrate. "I've simply remembered, simply understood, simply accepted what I've always been. What we've all always been, vessels, carriers, seeds waiting to germinate, waiting for the right conditions, the right moment, the right depth." He reached toward the controls, toward the switches that would flood the cabin, that would open us to the ocean, to the pressure, to them, and I knew we were going to die down here, knew we were never going to see the surface again, knew that whatever made it back up, whatever emerged from the abyssal star when it was recovered, it wouldn't be us. Not really, not anymore. But Harper, brave, brilliant Harper, she didn't hesitate, didn't freeze like I did. She grabbed the emergency oxygen tank mounted on the wall, 20 pounds of compressed gas in a steel cylinder, and she swung it hard, connecting with Chase's head with a sickening crunch that echoed through the confined space. Chase dropped, unconscious, bleeding, maybe dead. I couldn't tell, didn't have time to check, because the moment he fell, the moment he lost control, the things outside, they reacted. They swarmed the submersible, dozens of them, hundreds, their bodies pressing against the hull, against the viewports, and I could see them up close, could see the details I'd missed before, could see that they weren't entirely physical, parts of them phased in and out of visibility, in and out of existence, like they were only partially anchored in our reality. The hull groaned under their weight, under their pressure, under their need to get inside, to reach us, to change us into whatever they wanted us to become. And I heard sounds, not through the water, not through the metal, but directly in my mind, voices that weren't voices, thoughts that weren't thoughts, images of what we would become, what they would make us. "Take the controls," Harper shouted, shoving me toward Chase's seat. "Get us out of here, now, before they breach the hull, before they get inside." I scrambled over Chase's unconscious form, my hand shaking so badly I could barely grip the controls, and I fired the ballast, blew the tanks, dumped every ounce of weight we were carrying, felt the abyssal star lurch upward, straining against the mass of creatures surrounding us, fighting to escape, to ascend, to return to the world we knew. But they held on, clinging to our hull, their appendages wrapped around the external equipment, around the cameras, around anything they could grip, and I felt the submersible shuddering, groaning, the structural integrity alarms screaming as they pulled, tried to drag us back down, tried to keep us with them, tried to prevent our escape. "More power," Harper urged. "Maximum ascent rate. Don't worry about decompression. Don't worry about protocol. Just get us up, get us to the surface. Nothing else matters." I pushed the thrusters to maximum, felt the motors screaming, protesting, overheating. But we were moving lowly, agonizingly slowly, but moving up, ascending through the water, climbing back toward light, toward air, toward safety. The creatures began to fall away, unable to maintain their grip, or unwilling to follow us into shallower water, into the light, dropping back into the darkness they came from, returning to their city, their structure, their ancient place beneath the world. But not all of them fell away. I could hear something on the hull, something scraping, something tapping. That same rhythmic pattern I'd heard in the test tank back at the facility. Tap, 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 pause, tap, 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 communicating something, sending a message, making a promise. At 8,000 feet, communications returned. Quinn's voice breaking through the static, panicked, terrified. "Logan." "Harper, respond. Please respond. We lost you for 40 minutes of complete silence. We thought you were gone. What happened down there? Why did Chase activate the emergency ascent protocol?" "Chase is unconscious," I replied, my voice hoarse, raw. "Harper had to stop him. He was compromised. He was going to flood the cabin. He was going to... I couldn't finish. Couldn't find words for what Chase had become, what he'd been about to do. "We're coming up," Harper added, taking over the communications, her voice steadier than mine, more controlled. "Maintain position, prepare medical, prepare containment, and listen very carefully. When we surface, when you open the hatch, do not, under any circumstances, let anything out except us. Do you understand? Nothing leaves this submersible except me and Logan, nothing." There was silence on the other end. Then Quinn's voice, small, frightened. "Harper, what did you find down there? What happened?" "We found the truth," Harper replied, looking out the viewport at the darkness below us, at the depths we were leaving behind. "We found what's been waiting down there since before life began on this planet. And Quinn, it knows we're here now. It knows we've seen it, and it's coming a little patiently, but it's coming to the surface, coming to reclaim what it thinks belongs to it." At 5,000 feet, I started breathing easier. The pressure was decreasing. The darkness was giving way to deep blue, then lighter blue. We were going to make it. We were going to survive. We were going to see the sun again. But Chase was stirring, groaning, his hands moving to his head, to the wound where Harper had struck him. And when his eyes opened, when he looked at me, I saw that whatever had possessed him down there, whatever had spoken through him, it was still there, still inside him, still using him, still waiting. "You can't escape," he whispered. His voice is on again, but wrong somehow, damaged, changed. "You can't tell them, can't warn them, because they won't believe you, won't accept it. Will think you've suffered decompression psychosis. Will think the pressure affected your minds. Will dismiss everything you've seen, everything you know. And by the time they realize the truth, by the time they understand what's coming, it will be too late. We will have already spread, already infected, already transformed this world into what it was always meant to be, what it was before the surface dwellers, before the sun worshippers, before humanity thought it owned this planet." Harper grabbed the oxygen tank again, raised it, ready to strike, but I stopped her. "No," I said quietly. "We need him alive, need him conscious, need him to tell everyone what he saw, what happened to him. He's proof evidence, the only way anyone will believe us." At 3,000 feet, we could see the hull of the Prometheus above us, a dark shape against the lighter water, growing larger as we ascended safety rescue home. Except I knew it wasn't home anymore. Knew that wherever we went, whatever we did, they would follow, would watch, would wait for the right moment to rise. At 1,000 feet, I could see sunlight, actual sunlight filtering down through the water, and it was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen, more beautiful than I'd ever appreciated, because I'd been in the dark, in the deep, in the place where light had never reached, where it had never been needed, where things older than light itself still lived. We broke the surface at 14:23 hours. March 18th, 4 hours and 17 minutes after beginning our descent, a lifetime ago, an eternity ago, when we'd been different people, when we'd been human, fully human, uncorrupted, unchanged. The crane lifted us onto the deck, and the moment the hatch opened, the moment fresh air rushed in, I climbed out, stumbled across the deck, and collapsed, my legs unable to support me, my mind unable to process everything I'd seen, everything I knew. Sierra was there, helping me up, asking questions I couldn't answer, and Ryder just stared at the submersible, at the hull, at the scratches and marks covering the titanium, patterns that looked almost deliberate, almost like writing, like whatever had held on during our ascent had left a message, had marked us, had claimed us. Quinn helped Harper out, and then they pulled Chase, still conscious, still smiling that wrong smile, still speaking in that layered voice about things that shouldn't be spoken, about truths humanity wasn't ready to hear, about the rising, about the transformation, about the end of the surface world's dominance. "Sedate him," Harper ordered, her voice commanding, authoritative. "Maximum dose. Keep him under until we get back to port, and then we need to run every test imaginable, brain scans, blood work, genetic analysis, because whatever's inside him, it's not entirely him anymore. It's something else, something that came up with us." They took Chase below deck, strapped to a gurney, still muttering, still prophesying, and I stood at the railing, looking down at the water, at the calm surface that betrayed nothing of what lay beneath, Nothing of the nightmare we just escaped. Nothing of the terror that was waiting down there, planning, preparing. Patient as only something millions of years old could be patient. We have to destroy it. Sierra said quietly, standing beside me. Whatever you found down there, we have to destroy it before it can do whatever it's planning. I shook my head. We can't destroy it. It's too big, too vast, too old, and besides, I don't think destruction is possible. I think it's been attacked before, by things we can't imagine, by weapons we can't conceive, and it survived. It always survives. It's been surviving since before the continents formed, before the first cell divided, before life, as we understand it, began. Then what do we do? She asked. I didn't have an answer. I didn't have a plan. All I knew was that we'd opened a door that should have stayed closed. We'd announced our presence to something that had been content to wait in the darkness, and now that it knew we knew, now that it had tasted our minds, our essences, our potential as vessels, it would act. The journey back to Seattle took 4 days. 4 days of paranoia, 4 days of checking and rechecking our equipment, 4 days of watching the water, watching for signs of pursuit, watching for evidence that they'd followed us, that they were tracking us, that they were coming. Chase remained sedated, unconscious. But even in his induced sleep he moved, twitched, muttered things in languages that didn't exist, drew shapes in the air with his fingers, geometric patterns that hurt to look at, that made my head ache, that seemed to contain meaning just beyond my comprehension. Harper spent those 4 days analyzing our samples, studying the recordings from our cameras, trying to understand what we'd seen, trying to find a scientific explanation, trying to fit the impossible into her understanding of biology, of evolution, of the origins of life. And what she found, what the data showed, it terrified her more than anything she'd witnessed in the deep. Logan, she called me to the lab on the 3rd day, her face pale, her hands shaking as she showed me her results. Look at this. Look at what I found in the water samples we collected from inside that structure. She pointed to her computer screen, to electron microscope images that showed cells. Maybe. They looked like cells, had the basic structure, but wrong, organized differently, functioning according to principles that shouldn't work, that violated basic biochemistry. These are alive. She continued, her voice barely above a whisper. But they're not using DNA, not using RNA. They have something else, something completely different, a genetic system that we have no name for, no understanding of in Logan. This is the important part. This is what keeps me awake at night. These cells, they're compatible with human tissue. They can integrate, merge, transform our cells into their cells, slowly, gradually, imperceptibly, until there's no distinction, no separation, until we become them, become vessels for whatever consciousness they serve. Are you saying? I couldn't finish the thought, couldn't voice what she was implying. I'm saying that what happened to Chase down there, it's infectious, transmissible, and everyone on this ship, everyone who came in contact with him, with the water from our samples, with anything from that place, we're all potentially contaminated, we're all potentially carrying them inside us, their cells mixing with ours, their consciousness bleeding into our minds, and we won't even know it's happening until it's too late, until we're no longer us, until we're the... I looked at my hands, clean, normal, unchanged, but were they? How would I know? How could anyone know if their thoughts were still their own? If their decisions were still their choices? If their identity was still intact? We need to quarantine ourselves. I said, making the decision instantly, knowing it was right, knowing it was the only option. The moment we dock, we go straight to containment, all of us, everyone on this ship. We can't risk spreading this, can't risk infecting others, can't risk allowing whatever we brought back to enter the general population. Harper nodded, relief crossing her face, relief that someone else understood, that someone else saw the danger. I'll prepare the protocols, make the arrangements, contact the CDC. They have facilities designed for exactly this kind of scenario, 4 unknown biological agents, 4 potential pandemics. But even as she said it, even as we made our plans, I knew it was already too late, knew that whatever we brought back, whatever had infected Chase, it was already spreading, already moving through the ship's water system, through our drinking water, through the very air we breathed, carried on moisture, on vapor, on the microscopic droplets that filled our lungs with every breath. On the morning of the fourth day, March 22nd, we arrived back at Seattle, but instead of docking at our usual berth at the Ocean Corps facility, we were diverted to a military installation, a secure harbor where men in hazmat suits waited, where quarantine protocols were already in place, where some of them had already recognized the danger we posed. They boarded us immediately, separated U.S., took us one by one into isolation chambers, and I remember looking back at the Prometheus as they led me away, looking at the ship that had carried us to hell and back, and I saw something moving on the deck, something that definitely wasn't human, something that had been hiding, waiting, and was now free, now loose in a world that didn't know it existed, didn't know to be afraid, didn't know to run. They kept us in isolation for 3 months, 3 months of tests, examinations, blood draws every day, brain scans every week, psychological evaluations every hour. 3 months of watching through reinforced glass as doctors and scientists poked and prodded and analyzed, trying to understand what we'd been exposed to, trying to determine if we were still human, still safe, still ourselves. Chase never woke up, whatever was inside him. It wouldn't let him wake up, wouldn't let him speak, wouldn't let him warn anyone about what was coming. He remained in that catatonic state, eyes open but unseeing, breathing but not alive, present but not there. And eventually they gave up, classified him as permanently compromised, and placed him in long-term containment, where he remains to this day, a warning, a reminder, a preview of what we all might become. Harper deteriorated quickly. By the end of the first month, she was drawing those patterns on her cell walls, those geometric shapes that hurt to look at, using her own blood when they took away her pens, using her fingernails when they removed everything else, and she would whisper to herself conversations with something that wasn't there, something only she could see, something that was teaching her, showing her, transforming her. They moved her to a different facility after week 6, somewhere with better security, better containment, better protection for what? She became something other than human. The others, Sierra and Quinn and Ryder, they were released after 60 days, pronounced clean, uninfected, normal, sent back to their lives with non-disclosure agreements and generous settlements that ensured their silence, that guaranteed they would never speak about what happened, what we found, what we brought back. But I wasn't released. I wasn't cleared because they found something in my blood, in my brain scans, in my genetic code, something that shouldn't be there, something that was changing me, slowly, gradually, but unmistakably. I was becoming something else, something new, something that hadn't existed before our dive. They kept me for an additional 3 months, 6 months total, running experiments, trying treatments, attempting to reverse whatever was happening. But nothing worked, nothing stopped it, nothing even slowed it, and eventually they gave up, accepted that I was infected, compromised, changed, but I was still me, still human enough, still in control, still capable of passing as normal. So they released me, with conditions, with surveillance, with the understanding that if I showed signs of complete transformation, if I became like Chase or Harper, they would bring me back, permanently. And that would be the end of Logan the human, the beginning of something else. That was 8 months ago, and I'm still here, still functioning, still mostly human, but I can feel it. I can feel them inside me, their presence, their consciousness, their memories that aren't my memories, their knowledge that I shouldn't possess, and sometimes, late at night, I hear them speaking, not in words, not in sounds, but in concepts, in pure information transmitted directly into my mind. And they show me things, the future, the plan, the transformation that's coming, not just for me, not just for the team, but for everyone, for all of humanity, for the entire surface world that they've decided it's time to reclaim, time to reshape, time to transform into what it was billions of years ago, before the sun drove them into the depths, before they were forced to hide, before they had to wait. The water in my apartment, yes, it moves on its own, because they're in it, their cells, their presence, spreading through the pipes, through the water table, through the aquifers that connect everything, carrying their message, their infection, their transformation to every corner of the world. And the breathing from my bathroom sink, that's real. That's them. Learning to exist outside the ocean, adapting to fresh water, to air, to the surface conditions they abandoned so long ago. practicing, preparing, getting ready for when they emerge, when they rise, when they finally come to reclaim what was always theirs. I've tried to warn people, tried to tell them what's coming, but no one believes me. No one takes me seriously. They think I'm crazy, traumatized, suffering from decompression psychosis or PTSD or some other convenient diagnosis that lets them dismiss me, ignore me, forget about me. But you who are watching this, you need to know, you need to understand, they're coming. They're already here, in your water, in your cells, in your mind, changing you slowly. So slowly you won't notice, won't realize, won't know until it's too late. Until you look in a mirror one day, see something looking back at you that isn't quite you anymore. Something that remembers the deep, that remembers the darkness, that remembers what it was like before. Humanity thought it owned this world. And here's the worst part, the part that keeps me up at night, the part that makes me question everything. I don't think they're evil. I don't think they're malicious. I think they're just old, ancient beyond comprehension. And from their perspective, humanity is the invasion, is the corruption, is the temporary infestation that needs to be corrected, needs to be transformed, needs to be returned to its proper place in the hierarchy of life. We were never supposed to leave the oceans. We were never supposed to develop consciousness, develop technology, develop civilization. We were supposed to remain simple, basic, part of their vast ecosystem, part of their grand design, and our evolution into thinking beings, our emergence onto land, our conquest of the surface. It was an accident, a mistake, an anomaly that persisted for millions of years, but is now being corrected. And I understand their logic, their reasoning, their right to reclaim what was theirs, and part of me, the part that's becoming them, agrees with it, accepts it, welcomes it, because I've seen their memories, lived their history, understood their perspective, and from where they exist, humanity's reign was always temporary, always borrowed time, always destined to end. But the human part of me, the part that's still Logan, still the man who went down into the deep and came back changed, that part fights, resists, struggles to maintain identity, to preserve humanity, to warn everyone while I still can, while I'm still capable of speech, still capable of thought, still capable of caring about the species I was born into. So please, I'm begging you, take this seriously. Don't dismiss this as fiction, as entertainment, as a horror story designed to scare you. This is real. This is happening. This is coming for all of us, and the only question is whether we'll fight, adapt, or accept what they're offering. Transformation, evolution, incorporation into something vast and ancient and utterly alien to everything we think we are. Check your water. Watch for signs. Unusual movement, unusual behavior, unusual thoughts that don't feel like your own. Dreams of the deep, memories of places you've never been, knowledge of things you never learned. And if you experience any of this, any of these symptoms, understand that you're already infected, already changing, already becoming something else. And maybe that's not the end. Maybe it's just the beginning of something new, something different, something that exists between what we are and what they are. A bridge, a hybrid, a new form of life that combines the best of both, the consciousness of humanity with the knowledge of the deep ones, the creativity of surface dwellers with the patience of the abyss. I don't know. I can't know, because I'm still in the middle of it, still transforming, still changing, and I don't know what I'll be when the process is complete. Don't know if there will be anything left of Logan, or if I'll be entirely them, entirely other, entirely new. Last night, I stood in my bathroom, staring at the mirror, and for just a moment, just a fraction of a second, I saw something else looking back at me. Something with eyes that reflected light they shouldn't see, with patterns moving beneath the skin, with knowledge contained in expressions that human faces weren't designed to make. And I understood. I finally understood what Chase had seen in himself down there in the deep, what had made him smile that wrong smile, what had made him accept what was happening, embrace it, welcome it, because it's beautiful in its own way, this transformation, this evolution, this becoming, and the human instinct to fear it, to resist it, to fight against it, that fades gradually, gently, until all that remains is acceptance, understanding, peace. And I think that's what they want, not invasion, not conquest, not destruction, but understanding, acceptance, recognition that they were here first, that they have rights, that they deserve their place in this world. And if that means humanity has to change, has to transform, has to become something new, then maybe that's just evolution, just natural selection, just the universe correcting course. The water is calling to me more strongly now. I can hear it even during the day, even when I'm awake, even when I'm trying to be normal, trying to maintain my human identity, trying to pretend I'm still just Logan, still just a marine equipment technician who went too deep and saw too much and brought something back that shouldn't have been brought. But I'm more than that now. I'm a bridge, a translator, a prophet, and my message is this: they're coming. We're changing. The world is transforming, and whether we fight it or accept it, whether we resist or embrace it, the result will be the same. Humanity as we know it, as we've always known it, is ending, and something new is beginning. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Thank you for staying until the end, because what I've told you, it's important, it's vital. It's the warning that might save you, or might prepare you, or might help you understand what's happening when the transformation reaches you, when the water in your home starts moving, when you hear breathing from your drains, when you start having dreams of the deep. Leave a comment below and tell me, have you noticed anything strange about your water lately? Have you felt anything changing inside you? Have you had dreams of places that shouldn't exist? Because if you have, if any of this resonates with you, then you're already part of it, already connected to them, already beginning your own transformation. And tell me what topics you want to hear about next, what stories you want me to share, what experiences you want me to document while I'm still capable, while I'm still human enough to translate their knowledge into language you can understand, while I still care about warning you, about helping you, about giving you the information you need to survive what's coming. Subscribe to this channel. Hit that notification bell, because I'll keep uploading, keep documenting, keep warning, until I can't anymore, until the transformation is complete, until I'm no longer Logan but something else entirely, something that exists in the space between human and other, between surface and deep, between what we are and what we're becoming. And know this, know that whatever happens to me, whatever I become, I tried, I warned you, I told you the truth while I still could, while I still remembered what it meant to be human, while I still cared about the species I came from. The deep is rising, the transformation has begun, the ancient ones are returning, and nothing we do can stop it. We can only decide how we'll face it, with fear or acceptance, with resistance or understanding, with humanity or transformation. The choice is yours for now, while you still have choice, while you're still you, while the water in your home is still just water and nothing more. But that won't last, it can't last, because they're already there, already inside you, already beginning the work of changing you into what you were always meant to be, what you always were, what you'll always become. Welcome to the deep, welcome to the truth, welcome to the transformation, welcome home.